Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our free hit video going into game week 29. I'm personally not planning on free hitting this game week, and I'll be releasing another video in the next few days explaining why I'll be going into game week 29 with only 6 players maximum. But I know a lot of you are, and there's two ways you could go for this. You could either go all in on a couple of teams or spread the players out around all the active teams for that game week. Kind of depends on your prediction skills or whether you think you should hedge your bets. But this team we're going to show spreads the players around a bit more, as teams that are playing this game week are inconsistent at the moment, and I think going all in on a couple could really backfire. So in terms of the fixtures for this game week, there's only 4 available, and if you were of the sort of inclination to just go in on a few teams, it'd probably be Brentford, Spurs, West Ham and Aston Villa. And you can do a mixture of that and spreading your players out as well. I've actually still gone for a triple up from Spurs in my free hit team here, and I think you could quite easily go for Maddison as well as Son. I think both Porro and Son are a must, so it depends whether you think Fulham are going to score a lot or concede a lot. And they are actually the 7th best team for goals conceded at Fulham this season. So it's not a given that Spurs are going to score a lot of goals, and Fulham did upset Man United a few weeks ago, so they do have that shock factor in them being the home team. I've gone with Van de Ven just because I think there's a lack of clean sheets available elsewhere in the game week, but I could totally see why you would go for Maddison. So I can't see clean sheets in the West Ham Villa game, so I've gone for no defenders from either. I think like Son, Watkins is a must on a free hit, and he still has the most attacking returns out of anyone this season. Douglas Luiz is on penalties and is also averaging an attacking return every 2 games for the year, which is a really good upside for a player like that. You wouldn't normally think of someone like Douglas Luiz getting that many attacking returns, but he's shown consistently he's doing that. The flip side of that matchup is Jared Bowen. He's the main attacker for West Ham, and although he's been inconsistent of late, he can score against anyone, and he's shown that. I think you could get Soufal for a defending option if you did want it, because he's the 3rd best defender for assists out of anyone this season. But for me, both Villa and West Ham are in the top 9 for goals scored for the league. So defensively, I don't really see it. I'd much rather you get a player in from the midfield or attack like Bowen, who has also shown that he can, get those explosive scores with a hat-trick a couple of weeks ago, and use your defensive options elsewhere. So in terms of clean sheets, I've gone with Flecken from Brentford. Burnley are the lowest scorers in the league currently, so if anyone's going to keep a clean sheet, it would make sense for it to be Brentford. I've also gone with Ivan Toney because Burnley have also conceded the 2nd most in the league, so I don't really see a free hit team not having Toney in it for this game week. Now, Doughty's rounding out the defence. He actually is 2nd in assists from defenders along with Pedro Porro. Forest are also the 4th lowest scoring team in the league, so there is a chance of an assist and a clean sheet combination, although Luton's defence is a little bit shaky at times anyway. Morrissey's also got 5 goals in his last 8 games, so he is very sort of going under the radar here as an option for an attacker this game week. I think it's between him and a couple of others who we'll talk about in a second, but he is a really good option, especially being the home team. Now, I think because Luton themselves have the 3rd worst defensive record in the league, it does make sense to have some sort of insurance against that with a Forest player. Out of all Forest players, Elanga has the most attacking returns with 12, and he has played 90 minutes in each of the last 4. Now we're going to look at the bench, and hopefully if you're using a free hit, you're not going to need your bench very much because you're getting in players for 1 game week. You've kind of done your background research and you know they're going to play. But it does make sense to give yourself some options just in case. You never know about sort of, injury news that you don't necessarily hear about. And you would want 1 or 2 options definitely that are going to contribute to your scores if they're needed to come in. So Fulham, we talked about actually, are in a reasonable amount of form in terms of playing the big teams. I wouldn't count them out completely against Spurs. I could see, because of the home team, them getting a bit of an upset, and we know Spurs are a bit inconsistent this season. I think one thing this team is missing is a Fulham attacker. You could swap Barkley for someone like Andreas or Harry Wilson, but Muniz also has 5 goals in his last 6 games, so you could totally get him in instead of Morris. So in terms of the strengths of free hitting generally this game week, I think you know, having sort of no points hits for your team is a real plus, because if you've only got 5 or 6 players and you want to get out a full 11, in order to get that in, you either need to book in transfers in advance or take points hits on the game week of. The downside of taking points hits is then you're stuck with those players, and you maybe need to take further points hits to get them out again after the game week. The downside of using all your free transfers weeks in advance is that, you know, you might get injuries in your team. You might have players out of form, or someone that comes into form that you want to get in your team. And so booking in transfers just for one game week really doesn't make sense to me. Although the weaknesses of using your free hit is that there's a low upside game week. There's only 8 teams playing in this game week. I think if you can get in less players who are better quality, like Son, Bowen, Watkins, Tony, players like that, you know, there's no point free hitting if it's just to get in rubbish defenders who are going to score you 1 or 2 points anyway. You could quite easily make that up by using your free hit in good double game weeks in the future and getting in players with really big upside. You know, so I understand that there's a fear of missing out, and if you were going to free hit, this would be the team I would suggest. But I also think there's mileage in just riding this game week out. You know, even if you got in like Spurs players, there's a chance Spurs lose to Fulham. You know, and I think that's, you know, there's teams who could, you know, Burnley could score a couple of goals against Brentford, and then you're kind of left with, well, I've used my free hit and I've got no points. You know, there's not really many clean sheets in there, and I think for a single game week, you know, West Ham versus Aston Villa, say, there's a chance those two teams just cancel each other out. It's a 1-1 draw, and, you know, you've not got any players who have got attacking returns. So of course that can happen in any game week, but I do think that it's worth noting that I'm not using my chip in any other game week as well. So if you are using it, just be aware of that. Of course, if that's what you want to do, absolutely go for it. There's the team. But good luck if that is you and you are brave enough to use your free hit chip this game week. Let me know if that is you, and, you know, if there are any players that I've missed from this team or that we've mentioned in the video. Please do like and subscribe. The support is really appreciated, and I will see you in the next one.